We are talking all about productivity, right? So, all of us women entrepreneurs, we want to get so many things done. And Sarah and I were just talking about how focus sometimes becomes an issue. And there's other aspects that come into being a woman entrepreneur or an entrepreneur in general. I call it the spaghetti method, where we throw spaghetti at the wall and we hope everything sticks. Um, but it often doesn't. And so that's why I am so excited to have you here with us, Sarah, to help us figure out how to be more productive and achieve those goals that we really want to have without getting sideswiped, right? So
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah. So let me introduce you. We
Okay.
are here with an amazing woman who is a clinical psychologist. You've been doing this for 20 years. Is that
Yes.
right? In
Yeah,
the
more than 20
field.
years. I just don't like to add it up.
No, we don't. Just 20 something. Doesn't matter. Yes,
20-ish.
I'm with
20-ish.
you. 20-ish. Yeah. So Sarah, uh, Reich,
Reiff-Hekking.
Reiff-Hekking. I'm getting the letters mixed up.
No worries.
And yeah.
It's a
And you,
tricky one. It's actually a trick. It's a trick.
and
Reif
I
rhymes with
failed.
life and hecking like oh heck. Reiff-Hekking. There you go.
Reiff-Hekking, Sarah Reiff-Hekking, who
You
is
got it.
the CEO of True Focus Coaching. And Sarah, I want you, because we were talking before we went on camera, we were talking about what got you to where you are today. And
Yeah.
the truth of the matter is, when you got into clinical psychology, you were not thinking about being a coach at that point. So kind of talk about your journey. And I loved how you weaved in entrepreneurship into where you are today. So if you can just kind of give us a background on that.
Yeah. Yeah, certainly. So I started out way back when, um, wanting to be a clinical psychologist, and I want to be that person that mapped out the mind body connection. So I have like this passion about health psychology and how do we live healthy, happy lives and productive lives, right? And get all of our gifts into the world while we're doing that. And so I went and I did that job. I got my degree in clinical psychology. I worked in an academic medical center, in preventive and behavioral medicine. I did NIH funded research. I did clinical practice with medically ill patients, helping them figure out how to use health psychology to change their behavior and become healthier along the way. And somewhere along the way, uh, the dream life or the dream job was not the dream life. So I'd met the guy, we had the kid, we'd gotten married, I had the position I wanted to have. And one day I remember I was running from my clinical office to the North 40 in the parking lot, huge medical campus where my car was parked, running like a crazy woman, jumped in the car, drove insanely fast to go pick up my kid, and I was late, right?
Uh-huh. Been
I
there.
can tell you've been there, right?
Yep.
And the daycare provider, I looked at her and I said, Marie, how much do I owe you? Because she had a policy, you pay for minutes late. And she looked me in the eye and she said, Sarah, it's not about the money. I just want you to be on time. And I knew at that point I was no longer walking my own talk, that, as I mentioned, the dream job and the dream relationship and my dream of being a mom had not added up to the dream life that I actually loved living. So that's when I had my what's the next level for me conversation with myself and started to do exploring. And this was in the early 2000s. It was before coaching was actually a thing. So when I left academic medicine to go be a coach, people thought I was going to be a fitness trainer. Right?
Oh,
Remember those
uh-huh.
days?
Yes.
That's what we thought coaching used to be, but no, like, so this life coaching and business coaching business had not taken off. But I had done my own research because that's who I am. I want to know the data. I want to know what I'm doing. I want to be really clear about it. And I knew that coaching was this growing industry that was helping people go from good to great instead of not so good to okay, which is what most clinical practice is about. Right.
Yeah.
So I love that good to great piece. And I love that conversation about what's the next level in your life. And as I grew True Focus Coaching, which is my company, what I realized that I'm really, really good at is helping time challenged entrepreneurs and professionals figure out how to get the right stuff done during their work hours, whatever those hours are, so that you know that you're growing your business, you're bringing in the income, you're doing all of those things you need to do to get to that next level in your business, and you're having the whole life that you want. Because what happens, Midori, is that if we focus just on business goals, that is what expands in our life. And guess what? We can't do it. What our brains and our bodies need to be taken care of. And we need to think about all of the other amazing pieces in our life that we want to have, right? So what I love to do is help people create that whole life that they love, including the cool business and the financially sustainable business, right?
Yes.
And the business that's sustainable from your effort and your team's effort, so that you can do all of the other things you want to do outside of work. Yeah.
It doesn't have to be just work or just being a mom. It can be all of it. And there's a balance, and that's why you're here. That's why you're here, is to help us not lose our minds, because I did lose my mind when my kids were younger and trying to run a business. That's why I'm so passionate about your topic. And I see it all the time. I don't care who the woman is when they have kids, and I don't care how successful they are. I don't care how big their team is. They still suffer from those challenges. And then they have then they say so many horrible things in their mind about themselves. And that's what I want you to help us with. Help us get to a better place.
Yes, absolutely. And I've been there too. I'll show you pictures. That little kid that I went, driving like a crazy woman to go pick up is now 21. Right? So I've been through all those stages, and I've been through different phases in my business, and I've made choices on purpose to build or to maintain and then to build again. There's some tricks to it, and it's got to come from you and where you want to steer the boat, right? It's got to be where you're steering your minutes. And this is what the time management thing is. You're steering your minutes towards where you want to go. Your minutes, your to-do list are just indications of how you're spending your life, right? So if there's a whole bunch of stuff on your to-do list that's not getting you where you want to go, you need to figure out how to say no to that.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're going to talk to us about getting over guilt, or not getting over guilt, but dealing better with guilt and some of the other aspects of what takes us off track.
We can talk about that. Absolutely. Okay. I'm going to talk about, first of all, how do you keep yourself on track? Because that's the most important thing, right?
Okay, let's do it.
Okay. All right. So let me go ahead and share my screen here. Let's see. And Midori, if you see any questions in the chat that I'm not seeing, just call
I'll shout them out. Yep.
Yeah, we'll go from there. Okay. Share screen. Okay, just give me a thumbs up if you can see the big old slide there. Yep.
We see it. Yep.
Good. Okay. All right. So welcome. Thank you so much for that introduction, Midori. And we're going to talk about 3 keys to unlocking productivity secrets for entrepreneurs. And I just want you to know that you're in the right place if this sounds familiar. You can't believe you have so much to do and you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. So just give me a thumbs up if that happens to you ever. Or if you're here live, type in the chat a yes, a maybe, a amen, right? The other thing I hear so much on this topic is, if I could just sit down and grind through it, Sarah, I'd be fine. But that doesn't ever seem to happen, right? Or it happens once in a while and I can kind of bail myself out, but I still have all of these things that I want to get to that are important that I don't. Yeah. So if that's you, give me a thumbs up or type a yes in the chat. I also hear, I know I can't do it all. I just know I can't do it all. Yeah. But you don't know what you're going to say no to when everything seems so important. Yeah. Really, really hard stuff that we deal with every day. So today we're going to cover why the things you've planned to do to move your business forward just aren't getting done, right? Those important things. Why do we don't get to the important things? We're also going to talk about how to take control of your time and tasks, get the important stuff done, and do the things you like to do outside of work, right? What I'd like to call the and conversation. Because one of the things that happens is we only have one set of goals and we focus heavily on those and we forget to talk about all the goals. So we're going to talk about how to get that in. And then we're also going to talk about what the actual tools are to stop feeling weighed down, overwhelmed, stressed, and confused. I have some stuff you can take right off the call today. Grab a pen and paper, take some notes. I have some other things that I'm going to have you click through so you can grab easily so we can send them to you, because we've put them together in a way that's going to be really helpful. And I want you guys to know I'm all about you taking something right off this training today. So if you hear something that's resonating, you hear something you want more of, type in the chat, let me know, and we can make sure that we follow up with you. Okay, so we talked a little bit about who I am in the world. This is me in the front, my husband in the middle, my son, that little boy who was 2 when I told that story, who is now 21. This is what we love to do together. We like to hike and bike and, you know, do all sorts of outdoorsy things. But what I want you to know is that I'm a busy working mom, right? So I have to figure out all of the things that I'm sharing with you today. I have worked on myself, and I use these tools daily, and I teach them to my clients who are entrepreneurs just like you guys, trying to figure out how to build that business and have the whole life that they want. So I'm not going to give you any more background. I think we've covered it. That's the glam shot, so you can see what we look like when we're all cleaned up. But first, I'd like to talk about what, you know, why be productive? Like, what is productivity to you? So I want you to take a moment and just ask yourself and write it down. If you're listening to the recording or you're here live, if you're here live, you can type it in the chat. But what is productive for you? So what do you know is productive for you? And really important to lean into, what does that look like? Because what I can tell you is, unless you know what you're doing when you're being productive, you're not going to know what you're doing when you're not productive, right? You've got to be able to locate that for yourself. How do you know what is productive? So, okay, so Midori says completing the needle moving tasks per day. That's what's productive. Yes. Now, write it down for yourself. How do you know what those tasks are? She said the needle moving tasks. And yes, the ones that are related to your long-term meaningful goals, right? Now, I also want you to ask yourself, what's happening when you're not being productive? Why aren't you productive? What happens? And just type a couple things in the chat if anything's coming to mind. Oh, and I love that Stacy says, what's happening when you're being productive? You're feeling good at the end of the day, right? So there's that sense of, I got the right stuff done. I feel good about it, right? So I want you to lean into that feeling and then, you know, reverse engineer that. What are the activities that get me to that feeling? Because so often we're looking for a feeling, but we don't reverse engineer that and figure out what the steps are, what the activities are that get us to that feeling. Okay, so why aren't you productive? Midori says fridge. You want to say more about that? When you're hungry and you end up in the refrigerator looking around. Yeah.
That was something that used to be an issue. Now I only do 3 meals a day, so I kind of solved that, but that was a big problem for a long time, where I would get to a point where I would get stuck on something, or I didn't feel like doing it. And so I just automatically, it was like, it was a magnet. I wasn't even thinking, I just would end up in the fridge. So.
Right. So that's an automatic behavior, right? It's called a habit. And habits can work for us, and they can also work against us. So one of the things that we need to that we bump up against when we're trying to be more productive is that we have these habits that easily pull us away. Overwhelm leads to procrastination, which ends up being a habit, which ends up being just a hardwired thing that we don't even know. And we're avoiding something, we end up in front of the refrigerator and we don't even know that happened, right? So we all have that fridge moment. And then Stacy says, if you're not productive, then you're mad at yourself for not doing enough, right? But enough of what is always the question, right? Because lots of times we feel like we're spinning a lot of plates. We've got it where you ever have that day where you're busy all day long and you're on your your email, you're in your Slack, you're talking to clients, you're talking to teammates, you're doing stuff all day, and you get to the end of the day and you're like, oh, I'm exhausted. And I don't feel like I got anything done, right?
Yes.
So yes, yes. Okay. So here's what people tell me most often when I ask this question, that they're not productive because there's too many things to do, right? And there's like just so much stuff, right? Where do I start? What do I do? So the first thing is there's just too much. And then the next thing is, I don't even know where to start because there's so many things to do. I don't know what those most important activities are, or everything seems important. And that makes me feel like a deer caught in headlights. And then I don't know what to do from there. Yeah. I see some heads nodding here. Okay. So, and then the other thing that happens is that there's lots of changes, right? So that plan that you put in place for today or tomorrow or next week, all of a sudden is blown out of the water because something changed. And we don't know how to handle that and keep ourselves focused on the meaningful and productive stuff. We just get pulled, right? We get pulled by that sea of activity that is just that treadmill of our day. So what I want you to take a moment to do is to think about, why don't you get the important things done? Like, what are the things that pull you that are not important? Like Midori said, the fridge, right? So that, now the fridge is the walking to the refrigerator, that's the end behavior. There's something before that that prompted, I need to get away and go away from the desk, right? Or the client situation, whatever that is. So I want you to notice, why don't you get the important things done? And write it down. And I see in the chat distractions. Okay, but what kind of distractions, right? Is it your Instagram feed? Is it that there's kids in the house? Is it clients or team member that are distracting you and you need to be focused on something else? What exactly is it? Right? Stress, yes, stress, again, stress is an emotion. So what's leading up to stress? And tech issues get in the way all the time, right? So make a list of why you don't get to the important things. And then I want you to start to think about, that's going to give you some information about what you need to stop doing so that you can focus on the important things. And I'm going to give you a way to filter right now about how you can decide what are those distracting things and what are the important things. So yes, Stacy, social media scrolling, that happens for all of us. And what I know happens is that becomes a hardwired behavior. We pick up this thing called the phone, right? And I can tell you, for most of us, we do this and press something before our frontal lobe is no longer engaged, right? This is a hardwired behavior. It just goes through the hindbrain into the finger to the phone. And we don't even know we're doing it. And we're looking at ads, or we're looking at friends. We're having FOMO. We're doing all of that without actively choosing it. So if that's the environment we live in, and you all know we do, our phone is just one example of that, then you got to get super clear about how you're going to keep yourself focused on the right stuff and how you're going to filter out what the right things are. Make sense?
Yeah. In fact, there's a lot of studies that show we go to our phone mindlessly because it's that dopamine release, right?
Yes.
With your studies, I'm sure you're very up to date on that, but we don't even realize it. So we become addicted.
Yes.
And
yes, it's waking up our brain with something that gives us a positive response. Dopamine is that neurotransmitter in our brain that gives us some energy and helps us think, right? But it's giving us energy and helping us think about social media. It's not building your business. And even if you're using social media to build your business, I can tell you, most of the time you spend on social media is probably not about building your business, right? Imagine if it was. What would that do for you? Okay, so make sure you write down why you don't get the important things done, because those are things you're now going to start to figure out how not to do, right? So let's pop into the 3 keys to unlocking productivity secrets for entrepreneurs. And the first key here is to make sure that you're using a prioritizing method. Now, I'm sure this is not a newsflash for most of you, right? I'm sure everybody's here has been told at some point, well, you just have to prioritize. And here's the thing, that's all well and good if you know how you're prioritizing. But if you don't have a method to prioritize, then it gets really crazy. Am I prioritizing in terms of who's in my face yelling at me? Am I prioritizing because this thing I'm about to do is going to explode my business bottom line? Am I prioritizing because my kid's homesick or my dog's puking right now? What is it, right? So you need to get really clear on a prioritizing method that's going to work for you. And the one I recommend and that most of my clients use are called your meaningful goals. I call this your triage tool. Okay. And long-term meaningful goals. So who's got goals? Yeah. Who's got business goals? You're in Midori's group. You're in Midori's community. If you don't have business goals, then I don't think you've been listening, right? So I know you have goals or you're formulating them. So the thing that's really, really important is to get clear on how you're using your minutes to move towards those goals. And if you're using your minutes in a way that aren't moving towards those goals, then you're not prioritizing. Okay, so you need to have that list of goals, and it needs to be the whole list of goals, not just the work goals, right? And ladies, I know that we're not really good at this. We have the work goals, and then we have all this other stuff. There's these other goals, right? I want to be a good partner. I want to take care of my kids. I want to be part of my community. But we're not really clear about what those things really are and what they look like lots of times. So unless you're clear, then you can't say yes and no to things that come across your desk or your calendar or into your inbox or into your life in a very clear, strategic way. Okay, so meaningful goals, meaningful long-term specific goals, and they're specific and they're measurable. All right, that's your triage tool. And I want you to have that list in front of you so that when you're overwhelmed, when things are exploding, you're going to look at it and say, these things that are exploding, are they related to my long-term meaningful goals? If they're not, you're going to say no. It's that simple. Or hand it off to somebody else. It sounds simple, right? It gets complicated quickly, and I know that. Okay, so this is a client of mine, Donna. She's a leadership coach, consultant and coach, and she really gets the small business owner entrepreneur mentality for herself and also for her clients. And she's taught this time management stuff to her own clients. And when she worked with me, we really got clear on creating that next level structure that was going to really help her continue to build the business and the whole life that she wanted. And it was this piece about meaningful goals and use them to guide the whole life that you want. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about why I use the word meaning. And this goes back to what Midori was saying about dopamine. All right, so meaning wakes up our brain. As human beings, our brains are pulled by things that are meaningful and important to us. And it gives us that dopamine hit. It gives us that energizing neurochemicals. And that meaning drives our interest, right? Which then drives our focus, which then drives our attention, which then drives our energy, right? You ever be exhausted at the end of a workday and nothing's feeling really wow to you at all? And then somebody calls you up and says, hey, I've got tickets to that thing we've been trying to get tickets to. And your energy pops up and you're ready to go. Yeah, that's an example of how meaning is driving your interest, your focus, your attention, and upping your energy. All right. So this is where I want you to lean into meaningful goals, not just business goals, not just personal goals, but meaningful long-term goals. And my definition are those goals that guide you in achieving the whole life that you want. And we've got to put it all on the page. This is that and conversation about how do I build that $1 million business and have the whole life that I want? How do I build that amazing next level in my program and serve so many people and take care of my health and be financially free and spend time with friends and family, right? So all of those things need to be on the goal list. Yes, personal mission statement, Midori, awesome. It's what helps create clarity on choosing your kick butt goals. Yes, personal mission statement, and let's remember it's the whole life. And it needs to be focused in what does finish look like, right? That's how we know we're going to reach a goal. What does finish look like? Oh, Hannah's doing hers this weekend. Do it, Hannah. Yes, block time, get her done. This is really formative. And I work with clients on that piece as well. So you've got Midori, you've got the expert here. Lean into what she's teaching you. It's going to set you up for success here. Okay. So the first thing is now you've got those goals. You spend a lot of time and energy with them. Now use them every day to filter what you're saying yes to and what you're saying no to. Use them in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening. All right. To match your minutes with where you want to go. All right, so that's key number one. Have a triage tool. I suggest meaningful goals. The next key is learn how to prioritize in multiple locations. So here's the thing about our brains. Our brains are pulled by our environmental context, right? So if you are at home having breakfast with your family or your dogs, whoever you eat with, right? I have both. You're going to have different priorities in that physical location. Your brain's going to come up with different things that you need to be doing. Yeah. All right. And then it'll be different when you're in the office at your desk. And if your desk is portable, like many of us, right? Then wherever you land is going to pull you. So this is where prioritizing gets hard. If you're in different locations throughout the day, then it gets very difficult to be clear about what are my priorities because your brain is being pulled by everything that your eyes see and that your body feels. Right? This is why it gets very, very complicated very easily. And frankly, why you're frustrated, why just work your goals might not be working for you. Yeah. So this piece I called prioritizing resilience. You have to get really good at prioritizing in different locations. Okay, I was at a conference in Dallas last week. Now, I have a portable business, even though I most often work out of this office. But I can tell you, with the conference going on and lots of close friends close by that I don't get to see very often, being out of my house in a different location, I had to be really clear about when was I working on my business and when was I doing conference stuff, right? So that's an example of how it could have been really easy to let a lot of balls drop because I wasn't being strategic about using my time and matching it to my priorities, right? Now, there was a bunch of time there I was getting stuff done that needed to get done. I was really clear about, and then a bunch of time that was allocated to the conference and networking and all of those filling me up kinds of things that I needed to do. But that's an example of how it's very easy in a different location I could have easily forgotten to check email. I could have easily forgotten to answer phone calls. I could have easily let an important client communication drop by the wayside. But I didn't because I was clear about how I was setting myself up for success in that environment. And yes, I used my team to help me as well. Okay, so this is a good example of, so here's another client of mine, her name is Tracy. And before we started working together, she felt like she needed to be working all the time, right? So give me a thumbs up if you've ever felt like that. I need to be working all the time. And it usually goes along with carrying that bag around with you, right? And in the olden days, we used to carry it from the office to the home office and back again. And some of us still do that. Some of us just sort of always have that stuff in our backpacks. And yes, Midori, guilt if not working. Yeah. And when I worked with Tracy, we got really clear about when, and this is one of those things I want you to take off the call today. This is critical, and it's not a one and done. You have to practice it over time. When are you working? When are you not working? All right. When is the start of your business day? When is the end of your business day? And I don't care which hours you pick, but I just want you to pick the right hours that work for your life, your brain, and your business. All right. And it's not 24 hours in a row. Okay. So pick 8 hours in your day that you're working, or 6, right? And that's when you're going to be really focused. And for Tracy, once she got really clear on when she was working, when she was not working, and the first time I said to her, you need to have 24 hours off in a row in your week, she almost fell over, right? Stacy just looked at me like, what did you just say? 24 hours off in a row, right? A lot of people look at me like I'm crazy when I say that. And Tracy almost fell over. But as we worked together and she got some of these systems in place that help, including using a triage method, what are my meaningful goals? When am I working on them? When am I doing work? When am I doing not work? Right? She now leaves the office knowing that all of her billable hours are taken care of. She's maximized her business day. Everything's handled, and she can take the evening and weekends off because she's not worried about things falling through the cracks. All right. But it always starts with when am I working and when am I not working, so that you know when you're shutting down, because guess what? Your brain needs off time in order to be able to function and be on when you're on. If you don't have the off time, then what happens is we end up being pulled sideways. Might be the refrigerator, might not, could be something else, might be a cat video, might be social media. It might be something you really enjoy doing, but it ends up happening at a time that you feel bad about it. You feel guilty about it, right? That's that guilt that Midori mentioned earlier. And now we don't get to even get the relief and get to be filled back up by that activity. We don't, because it feels like a guilty pleasure. We feel bad about it now. All right. So when you're working, when you're not working, and then the next level to that, I call this a flexible template for your week. This is one of those tools. It's not a one and done. You have to practice it. When are you working? When are you not working? When are the must-do work activities? When are the must-do home activities? We all have them. And then the must-do fun activities. What is the fun you need to get into your week? Because fun is going to fuel your brain and your attention and give your body the energy to be focused. Bottom line is we can't be focused 100% of the time. So you got to choose when you're going to use it and how you're going to use it. Yes, Midori, I always try to create flow throughout my day so I'm more focused and productive. Yes, so flow is a specific psychological state that is that place where we are, it's actually a little bit paradoxical, because when we're in flow, we start to lose track of time, which sounds like the opposite of time management, but we feel like we're in this timeless space. We're very focused on something, and it's often something that is interesting and a little bit challenging for us. And there are ways to get into flow. And some of it has to do with how you set up your day so that you're doing the activities that are matched with when your brain's ready to do those activities. Okay, so for example, many of us need to do writing. You know, we need to, for our businesses, whether you're writing a press release, you're writing an email sequence, you're writing a proposal. And we each typically have a specific time of day that's easier for us to do that kind of activity. So I want you to start to get really clear about that and plan to do those activities at that time. All right. That way you're not fighting yourself to get started on the thing. If you know you can't write till 3 o'clock in the afternoon, don't ask yourself to do it 10 in the morning and beat yourself up all bloomin' day and then finally start at 3. Okay. So do some of that matching of your energy in your day as you're putting together that flexible template for the week. Okay. Okay, I'm just going to take a look in the chat because there's some
Yeah,
good
let me
stuff
just
coming in.
share that. Hannah and Stacy have the same question about ADHD. What's the difference between not being good at time management versus ADHD and not being officially diagnosed? And let me just say this. Probably 70 to even higher percent of the entrepreneurs who I know have some form of ADHD, and it's why we get into this, and it's why it can also be used as a tool to help us be more successful. So yeah, Sarah, if you can hit on that, that'd be great.
Absolutely. So I've worked with a ton of adults with ADHD. Here's the thing, ADHD is a neurological makeup, basically. All right. And one of my grounding beliefs is that we're all wired differently. So you have to be careful what you copy. All right. So if ADHD, often you have a fast moving brain, which has this paradoxical component where it moves really fast and then you get into something and man, are you into it, right? And it's often called hyperfocus. So with ADHD, people that have ADHD have a hard time managing their time, right? What I all want you guys to know is that it is teachable, it is learnable. All of the things I'm sharing with you today and in all of my programs are ADHD friendly. And it's one piece of the ADHD puzzle. Now that gets coupled with our environment that is set up to make us all act like we have ADHD and get pulled in a million different directions. So if you have an ADHD brain that gets pulled easily and you're in an environment with lots of things that are pulling you, then it's going to be a lot harder to focus on the important things. So you need to take ownership of that. It's not a moral failing. It's not. You just need to take ownership of the brain that you were given and set up your environment to shut down those distractions and to keep you focused. All right, really, really important. So some of that has to do with how are you setting up your day and your week, that time management piece, the flexible template for your week. How do you build that out, right? And you want to build it out in a way that if you need some locked in accountability, if you do better sitting with somebody doing a co-working over Zoom or co-working in real life, and you're actually getting work done, you're not just chatting, right? Then honor that and set it up for yourself. Okay. One of the things early on that I did was I set up a meeting with a good friend of mine named Jay, and Jay's also a coach. We were both not writing stuff that we needed to write for our own businesses. So we decided to get together on Thursday mornings. We met at Starbucks. We get there at 9 o'clock. First 15 minutes, we'd chat, we'd get caught up, we'd get our coffee. For the next 45 minutes, we would look at each other and say, what are you writing on? Do you know how you're going to get started? And then we turn the tables. What are you writing on? What are you going to get started? How are you going to get started? As soon as we were good, then we would write for 45 minutes to an hour, and then we would connect and be out of there by 10:30. It is how the curriculum that I teach every week of every year got written. All right. 45 minutes a week. Super powerful. Locked in accountability is what I call that. Right. But remember, there's parameters there. You're both clear about what you're going to work on. You're both clear. It's not chit chat time. There's a clear structure. And if you can't hold the structure, then you need to have somebody else who can. Again, it's not a moral failing if you can't hold the structure. You just got to own it. Right. And when I talk about accountability, one of the things I talk about is that we can often be accountable to ourselves. Sometimes that works. These are the things you write down and you check off. That's called self-accountability. If self-accountability isn't working for you for something, there's nothing wrong with you. You just need to stop asking yourself to be accountable to yourself for it. And you need to figure out somebody else to be accountable for, or a different way to get yourself pulled into that activity. Okay. And with ADHD, getting started and getting pulled into some of the right activities, particularly if they feel boring, right? Or if they feel right. I have some heads nodding here. So you need to figure out, again, this goes back to meaning and dopamine. Why do I care about this activity? Why is this activity on my to-do list, on my meaningful goals list? And when you start to label, I care about getting the blooming invoices out because I care about customer service, and invoicing is customer service. Then you're not doing invoicing, you're doing customer service, and that's a lot easier to move into. All right. So that's just one example of how you want to get clear when there's that thing you're not starting. Why do I care about it? Where is it related to my long-term meaningful goals? And how do I need to pull myself in to get started? Those are the three, that's what you ask yourself. Okay. Let's see what's happening in the chat here. Yes. Yes, on Midori's platform, there's 60-minute power sessions. Awesome. Do that. And if you find a group that you just do it really well with, set up a regular routine. Okay. I also have a group of entrepreneurial besties we meet once a week. We have been for 10 years. 10 years, ladies. Once a week. And we ask each other questions, because you know what? They're going to help me solve my questions so much faster than if I do it myself sometimes. And in, an hour, 20 minutes is maybe wins. The other 40 minutes, we each get 10 to 12 minutes apiece. We solve amazing problems that save us so much time and energy. Okay. So that's another time management tip. Get out of your own head and ask for support. And I know this community has got your back on that. Okay. I would like to do another one during the week, but I'm not ready to commit. Yeah. So notice, Hannah, like what can you commit to and show up to? I'd rather have you commit to a smaller amount of time and actually do it than say you're going to do it and teach yourself to blow yourself off, right? So don't teach yourself to blow yourself off. That's a complicated concept right there, but we do it all the time. I'm going to do this at 10 o'clock on Wednesdays, and it shows up in your calendar every week and you don't do it. That's called teaching yourself to blow yourself off. Don't do that. The things that go into your calendar are the things you're going to do. Your calendar is not a to-do list. It is not a place you dump stuff so you don't forget it. It's a place where you map out how you're going to spend your time in the way that's going to support you being who you want to be in the world, including the business owner you want to be. All right. It's a time map. That's what your calendar is. Okay. Yes. Teaching myself to blow myself off. We do it all the time. Don't do it. Catch yourself. It'll change things. Okay. So let me just notice time here. All right. There's a bunch of stuff I just want to fly through here. And then we can also do some Q&A. But so we were talking about the second key, the first key to unlocking productivity secrets is number one, use your meaningful goals to guide how you're spending your time. Practice it. Practice it. The other one is learn how to prioritize in multiple locations. Keep coming back to those goals. All right. And then, and what I call that prioritizing resilience, right? You want to be resilient about how you're prioritizing. And then the last key here, and we talked about Tracy, the last key here is prioritizing at different times of day, right? So this is why prioritizing gets so complicated, because we get pulled by our physical environment, then we get pulled by which interacts with the time of day and the time of year. Okay. We have different priorities when we roll out of bed, even though our goals are the same. Yeah. Goals haven't changed. But when I get out of bed on Tuesday, it might be different than when I get out of bed on Wednesday. I might have a different priority. That's how it gets complicated easily. So you got to be clear about how you're leaning into prioritizing regularly, and it needs to be part of your everyday. And at least once a week, you need to be making sure that you're matching your calendar with your long-term goals and that your goals are represented in your calendar. All right. Because I know a question that's going to come up is, how do I do that thing that I'm not doing? Well, if it's not set aside in your calendar, time in your calendar, you're never going to get there. If you don't have that space, you got to make space. And if you're making space and you're not showing up for it, then you need to pull in some locked-in accountability and figure out what wakes me up. What is the meaning? Why do I care about that activity? How do I get started on it in a non-judgmental way? We all have a hard time getting started on important stuff. It's called being human. So don't beat yourself up about it, but lean into support to help get you started. Okay. So prioritizing at different times of year is also really important, right? We're doing this in August. I can tell you, I bet all of you have different priorities today in August than you would if we did this in December. Okay. So there's that flow, and it doesn't mean your goals are changing, right? But you might be prioritizing different parts of your goals, or there might be a different balance between work and home. right? Or there might be a time where you really focus on work and a time where you really don't, and it's more family or community, right? So this is what I call practicing seasonal adaptability, right? So really, really important to think about what is that seasonal flow in your life and your business. There's an interaction, and lots of times we know it, but we forget about it. Okay, so I'll give you an example. What happens on April 15th in the United States? Anybody? Anybody? Hold on. It's not coming up. I bet somebody said taxes.
Tax.
Yes, it is tax day. Okay, it's tax day. I can tell you right now that in March, you need to be getting your taxes together, right? Maybe even in February, January. Or you can also be doing it once a month all year. And then when you get to March, it's not a big deal, right? But that's an example of, I can tell you, most business owners I know do this thing where they turn the calendar to January, and then it's February, and then they're like, oh my God, taxes. It happens every year. It's not a surprise, right? So that's an example of how we want to make sure that when we know things are happening in particular seasons, that we're planning for that. And we're thinking about that as we're figuring out how we're going to move forward on our goals. All right. So practicing seasonal adaptability. That's another client of mine, Karen Rolfe. And what I love about her comment is that a lot of this comes to creating the habits that you need to get the most out of your day. The habits that you need to get most out of your day. Okay. And who would like to hear a little bit more about that? Yeah. Okay. So we've talked about the 3 keys to unlocking productivity secrets, right? You need to have a triage method. You need to practice seasonal adaptability, and you need to be, you need to keep practicing triaging those goals in different situations, right? Time of day and physical location. So the next problem that comes up is this. You're really, really clear about what your goals are. Sarah, I heard it. I need to make sure that I'm triaging every moment. All my minutes need to match up with my goals. The new problem, you distract yourself, right? You walk away from the desk. You put down the notes from the meeting. You go into something else, and all this goes out the window, right? So there's a really important tool that I'm going to share with you that I call practice the pause. And this is so important in terms of interrupting yourself and practice creating that positive habit that asks you, what am I doing now? Why am I doing it? And is this what I really want to be doing? Okay. So I'll put this link in the chat. But let me share another screen. Okay, so this is my practice the pause process. And I have this handout. You don't need to take notes. I've got this handout. If you on a page, I'll put the link in the chat. But practice the pause is a very easy thing to do, but you have to practice it first when you're not in a super stressful situation, you know, when it's not that day where everything's feeling a kerfluffle, right? You have to first practice when you feel like you have some control over your time and your space. And you do this, it only takes a minute, all right? 1 minute. You're going to pause. You're going to take a deep breath and ground yourself. And then you're going to ask yourself, what am I doing right now? I am about to run out and check my phone on the way out the door. Yeah. Then you ask yourself, What is the most important use of my time right now? Oh, actually, I don't need to check my phone. I need to get myself grounded so I can move into that next meeting and be focused. And then you make a choice. Am I going to check my phone, or am I going to get myself grounded and move into that next meeting focused? Okay. So the last step there is decide. Make an active decision about what you're going to move into. All right. And then there's some tips there. You'll see there's an audio version. You can literally download it and have it on your phone and have me in your ear when you need it. And there's also a video version of the same thing. They're both about a minute. You can download them on the phone. So let me just take a second here and pop that link into the chat so you can grab it. And make sure you get it in your inbox. Okay. All right. So just give me a thumbs up if that link came through the chat. Okay. Okay, good. Awesome. All right. So, practice the pauses is one of those tools that my clients come back to time and time again. And the more advanced they are in managing their time, the more often they do this. Because it is the practice and the habit that allows them to remember to plan their time, to remember to get stuff out of their head onto their to-do list, to remember to take a look at their to-do list and see if it connects with their long-term meaningful goals. Because here's a hint, if your to-do list doesn't match your long-term meaningful goals, then you need to figure that out. You need to say no to a bunch of stuff, right? Because if we don't do that, we end up back on this treadmill, right? You know, that behavioral treadmill that we're on where you wake up, you do your things, and at the end of the day, you're exhausted and you feel like you haven't done the right stuff. And then you feel bad. And then you feel like you need to work into the evening. And then you feel more bad because you're not spending time with your friends and your family. And then you stay up too late and you wake up and you start it all over again. Yeah. So I'm going to take some questions, but before we do that, if anybody here would like to have a conversation with me about how to make some of those shifts and apply some of the things that we've done here, I'm going to put that link in the chat. Okay. But I also want to make sure that I get to really a few of the steps that you need to put in place. And these are the things that I help people fine tune. They're going to look a little bit familiar because we've already talked about some of them, but I want to summarize them and make sure you have them. Okay. So you need to make sure that you figure out where you're wasting time and make changes to get more done. Okay. So we started at the top of the call with that, right? Get clear about what's not helping you, what's not useful, and what is. You also need to create those daily and weekly routines that allow you to get the most important stuff handled. So you just know it's going to happen, right? That's that flexible template for your week that I talked about. It's not a one and done. It happens for seasons. It happens for periods of time, and then it gets shifted, but you have to shift on purpose. Otherwise, you end up on that treadmill where you're running, and you're not getting anywhere except to exhaustion. And you need to have a daily and a weekly planning process. Daily and weekly planning. Again, with your calendar being a time map. A time map. And you want to have a process that helps you keep steering towards your goals. Checking in with your meaningful goals. You've got that here with Midori. You've got that here. Lean into that. It's gold. And you need to use the prioritizing method I just talked about to really choose the activities that are going to get you where you want to go and how to fit them in. Okay, so let me just take one moment and put the link to apply to talk to me in the chat. And this is just an hour with you and me. Okay, I have you answer a few questions. That's just so that I have a little bit of information about you. It takes about 5 minutes to fill out. Go ahead and click it if you're interested in it. and you can fill it out when we're off the call. And it's an hour, and I'm going to help you figure out where you're stuck in terms of managing your time and your tasks, and what are the next steps for you. It's not a sales call. It's me and you one-on-one, because I want to have that conversation. That's how I best help people. And we can figure out how to handle those problems and how to get you to that next level that you want to get to. All right. I know we're tight on time, but if you guys have a couple questions, I'm happy to answer them.
You can come off mute if you do have any questions, but this has been really, really helpful. I loved the concept of location based, right? Because you're right. I didn't really I know we're not supposed to work from bed, but yeah, it can take us off our game so easily based on the location. So I love that you brought that up.
Yeah. And that's one of those, brain thinking interactions, body thinking interactions that we forget about. And we think there's something wrong with us, but you can just take control of that and be really clear, even in a new environment, about how you're going to do that. Right. So
Yeah.
That might mean going into a room and closing the door. It might mean turning off things that are going to beep and buzz. It might mean putting your headphones in so people don't bother you. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Stacy, did you have a question or a comment?
Yeah, this is wonderful, Sarah. It's been great meeting you. Quick question. In order to stay on track, like I'll do all the planning, I'll write everything down, I'll participate in everything, and I'll have my goals set up. How do I not forget about what I set up as my goals in the first place? I mean, I put Post-its in my room saying it, but somehow I'm like, oh, what did I do again? Or what was that? And I somehow forget. Any tools?
Yes. And it sounds like Hannah's nodding her head. Like, yeah, that's something that happens. It happens to a lot of people. I talk to clients about this all day long. And the short answer is, you need to develop the habits that remind you to keep looking at it and actively using it, right? Actively using your goals. And so it might be, in Midori's community, I know that there's resources where I'm sure she says, take a look at your goals. Where are you on your goals, right? Make sure you're actually doing it, and that you're pulling out the paper. You're not just mentally going through them, that you're actually looking at it. You're actually looking at what are your milestones and where are you in relationship to the milestone in a non-judgmental way, right? But get your brain to actively do it. Because so often we're like, yeah, healthy lifestyle. Yeah, build my business. Yeah, good friend and family member, right? That's very different than, how do I know I'm being a good family member today? How do I know I'm building my business today? How do I know I'm taking care of myself today? Right? So you want that next level, Stacy. And oftentimes people need their hands held to practice that. So don't feel bad if that's you. And if you want to talk about how to set that up, you feel free to apply for one of those strategy sessions. I would love to talk to you, because listen, we're running against that behavioral treadmill, right? Of just what we do. So if what you've done for 10 years is write goals and then go off and do something else, it's going to take some effort. Effort is not bad. Effort just means it's going to take some energy to practice doing that thing that you want to do. So, and lots of times we need the accountability. We need the locked in accountability. We need our hands held. We need team members to support us. We need to put systems in our businesses that remind us. There's lots of different pieces that you can put in place that will help you do it. And then you're going to have to keep asking yourself, am I still doing it? Right? Am I still doing it? So every quarter when you meet with Midori, am I doing it? Right? Yeah.
Yeah, this has been awesome. We're at time, so I want to be respectful of the time, but thank you so much, Sarah. And then for anyone who's listening to this, I have put Sarah's link to set up a strategy call with her in our event page, where this recording will live as well. So you can go and create a strategy session with her, which will be so valuable, because I know you'll just cut through all the the things, that the obstacles that we put in front of ourselves. They don't have to be so difficult. There are techniques and tools, and having the right person there to guide you makes such a massive difference. So I appreciate everything that you have shared with us today. And then for all the women that are here today, your questions and authenticity, talking about what's really going on in your lives and in your business, we all struggle with things, right? And so that's why we bring amazing women like you, Sarah, to teach us how to improve our systems and our lives and get through this whole thing that we call business. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. And just remember, anything you practice, you can get better at, including all of these concepts that we've talked about today. I know you can do it. I'm happy to help. And thank you so much, Midori, for having me.
Yes, everyone have a great day. Thanks again, Sarah. And I will see you all soon. Take care.
All right, take it easy.